This will be for the Kuta software worksheet, more properties of exponents. So if you have two numbers raised to an exponent and it's the same number, like in this case, they're both x's, then if they are multiplied by each other, you can just add the exponents. So x to the power of a times x to the power of e. You keep the x's, you just keep the x, and you add the exponents, a plus b. Now, if you have a number raised to an exponent, and you raise that to another exponent using parentheses, then you just multiply the exponents. So here we have x to the power of a to the power of b. You keep the x, and then you just multiply a times b for the exponent. Now, if you're dividing numbers with exponents, if the number matches, okay, for instance, we both have x's here. This is x to the power of a divided by x to the power of b. Again, you keep the x, but instead of adding the exponents, you subtract the exponents going down. So the exponent here is going to be a minus b. So you just subtract the exponents going down. Now, if you have two numbers or more multiplied by each other, and using parentheses, that whole product is raised to an exponent, that exponent actually gets applied to both numbers. Okay? So if you have x times y to the power of a, that's going to be x to the power of a times y to the power of a. So that exponent gets applied to both numbers. And if you have a negative exponent, you can take the entire number with the exponent and shift the whole thing into the numerator or denominator. Okay, so in this case, we have 1 over x to the power of negative a. We can take this whole thing and move it to the numerator. And all we have to do is change the sign on the exponent. So 1 over x to the negative a is just going to be x to the positive a. Okay, if you take this whole thing and move it to the numerator, you change the sign. The same holds true with a negative exponent in the numerator. Okay, here we have x to the power of negative a. And you can put this over 1. It's the same thing. We can take this whole thing and move it to the denominator. Okay, and all we have to do is change the sign, the plus minus sign on the exponent. So x to the negative a divided by 1 is the same as 1 over x to the positive a. So the negative a became positive a, and we just moved it to the denominator. And finally, anything to the power of 0 equals 1. Okay, so x to the 0 equals 1. And if you see something in parentheses, it doesn't matter what is in the parentheses, okay? Even if it's x times y times z, if it's raised to the power of 0, it's going to be 1. Okay, the instructions say to simplify, and your answer should contain only positive exponents. All right, let's look at number 1. We have two numbers multiplied by each other. Okay, we said before, since the two x's match, we keep the x, and then we just add the exponents. So negative 2 plus negative 3 is going to be negative 5. Okay, and that is still raised to the power of 4. And we said if we have something with an exponent raised to another exponent, you just multiply the exponents. So you want to keep the x, and negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Okay, and finally we said for negative exponents, you can shift the whole thing into the numerator or denominator. So I am going to put x to the negative 20 divided by 1. And what I'm going to do is take this whole thing and move it into the denominator and then change the plus minus sign on the exponent. So we have 1 in the numerator, and x to the negative 20 becomes x to the positive 20. And that is the most simplified answer. Okay, you can check your answers on pages 3 and 4. All right, let's look at number 3. We have n to the third raised to the power of 3. So we keep the n, and the exponents get multiplied in this case. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, and that's going to be times 2 to the n times 2n to the negative 1. All right. Now we can move these are all multiplied, so we can move the 2 in the front just to make it a little more easy to look at here. So that's going to be 2 times n to the 9th times n to the negative 1. Okay, so now we can see that we both have n's right here. We keep the 2, we keep the n, and the exponents get added. 9 plus negative 1 is just 8. Final answer. All right, and it matches the answer they got for number 3. All right, let's look at number 5. It's not as bad as it looks. These are all multiplied in the numerator. Let's take care of that first. For the constant terms, we have 2 times 4, which is 8. And 8 times 3 is going to be 24. Okay, now for the exponents, let's look at the x's first. Okay, we'll keep the x, and we're adding exponents. So x squared, let me get rid of this here. X squared, 2 plus 2 is 4. And the 1 on the end is the same as x to the first power. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So that's going to be x to the 5th. And now let's do the y's. Okay, there's only 2 y's. We have y to the 4th and y to the 4th. 4 plus 4 is just 8. Okay, in the denominator, we have a 3. X to the negative 3, and y squared. Okay, let's look at the constants first. 24 divided by 3 is just 8. And for the x's, they are divided, so we subtract the exponents going down. 5 minus negative 3. Remember, 2 negatives in a row is positive. So 5 minus negative 3 is 5 plus 3. So that's an 8. That's the exponent on the x. And then for the y's, 8 minus 2 is 6. Final answer. All right, let's look at number 11. Let's do the numerator first. This whole thing is raised to the power of negative 1 since it has parentheses. So that negative 1 gets applied to the 2. Okay, so that's going to be 2 to the negative 1. And the m squared, the negative 1, also gets applied there. So that's going to be m. And 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And that's divided by m squared. All right. So remember we said when the exponent is negative, we can take this whole thing and shift it into the denominator. Okay, so that's going to be 1 divided by 2 to the negative 1 becomes 2 to the positive 1. Okay, and as far as the m's are concerned, you just subtract the exponents. So You can keep the 1 if you want. It's not really going to do anything in the numerator. But we have m, and then -2 minus 2 is -4. All right. And then finally, two to the first power is just 2. So let's see, we have a 2 in the denominator, and m to the -4, we're going to take that whole thing and move it down. So m to the -4 becomes m to the +4, and we still have a numerator of just 1. Final answer. All right, number 15, I'm going to distribute this -3 first. So let's leave the b times a to the 4th. And distributing this -3, okay, the -3 is applied to the 2. So that's going to be 2 to the -3. And then it's applied to the b, so that's going to be b to the -3. And then it's applied to the a to the 4th. So a to the power of 4 times -3 is going to be -12. Okay, and let's see. 2 to the -3, these are all multiplied. 2 to the -3, we can move that to the denominator and make it 2 to the +3. Okay, and let's do the a's here. A to the 4th times a to the 12th. 4 plus -12 is going to be -8. So we got those. And then for the b's, if there's no exponent, it's automatically 1. Okay, so we have b to the 1 times b to the -3. 1 plus -3 is b to the -2. 1 plus -3 is 2. And now, like we said, we can take each of these and move them to the denominator and change the exponent to positive. All right. Let me see. I have more room over here. So we'll keep a 1 in the numerator. 2 to the 3rd. 2 times 2 times 2. That's going to be 8. Okay. And a to the -8 becomes a to the +8. But instead of being in the numerator, it's moved to the denominator. B to the -2, move that to the denominator. It becomes b to the +2. Final answer. All right, last one, number 21. Let's distribute the -4 first. Okay, we have 2 to the -4. And p to the -4. All right, let's see. M to the power of -1 times -4. -1 times -4 is +4. And q to the 0 is just 1. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll distribute it anyway. Q to the 0 times -4, it's still going to be q to the 0. Okay, because 0 times -4 is just 0. Now for the second part, we have 2m to the -1, p to the 3rd. And on the bottom, we have 2pq squared. Okay. Now we can combine the 2's in the numerator, but we have a regular 2. These are all multiplied in the numerator, so we have a regular 2 divided by a regular 2, so that's gone. All right. 2 to the -4, we can move that into the denominator and make it 2 to the +4. So that's gone. As far as the p's are concerned, we have p to the negative 4 and p to the third. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. So those are done. And for the m, we have m to the fourth and m to the negative 1. 4 plus negative 1 is positive 3. So those are done. And q to the 0 is just 1. We can write times 1, but it doesn't do anything. And in the denominator, we have pq squared. All right. So let's see. 2 to the fourth, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, that's 16. Okay, subtracting exponents. When there's no exponent, it's automatically 1. So we have p to the negative 1. Negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. So that's going to be p to the negative 2. There's no other m, so we'll keep m to the third. And there's no other q, so we'll keep q squared. Okay, finally, p to the negative 2, we're going to take that and move it to the denominator. All right, so we still have m to the third. And we still have 16. P to the negative 2 becomes p squared, positive 2. And q squared is still there. Final answer.